Welcome to Designing the Best You, a podcast hosted by board-certified holistic health practitioner, functional nutritionist, and autoimmune and trauma survivor, Vennessa McFarland. Vennessa focuses on holistic health, educating and empowering people to take charge of their own fatigue and pain during those in-between moments of life, while confidently owning their own health journey. It's so easy to feel like you're the only one struggling, and boy does Vennessa know. As a wife and mom of 3 young boys whose body acted as if she had multiple autoimmune diseases because of the childhood trauma she endured, she knows exactly what it's like to lose yourself and your life. She is here to share how she learned to cope with the many changes disease brings and the things your doctor doesn't know or even tell you. This week's episode is one of many where we bring on guests who share their stories of overcoming trauma, managing their chronic conditions naturally, as well as tips from top practitioners and experts in the field of holistic health. Get ready to be blown away and start designing the best you. All right, everyone, welcome back to Designing the Best You. And today we have a special guest on our show. This person is a dear mentor and friend of mine and is a board-certified holistic health practitioner as well, founder of Serious About Wellness. And through his own health challenges and struggles, Dustin here has decided at an early age that the only way he was going to heal himself was to learn as much as possible about being healthy. While being a personal trainer and nutritional health coach, Dustin found his passion for helping others with their health. He is very serious, and I can say this personally, about helping people achieve their optimal health through diet and lifestyle changes. He specializes in getting people out of the cycle of trial and error by focusing on their whole picture, which includes their hormones, immune system, digestion, detoxification, energy system, and neurological health. He believes in living his best life and strives to help others do the same. With the philosophy of maximizing every aspect of life for him and his clients, he is serious and very passionate about helping people take care of the most important asset in their life, their health. Welcome, Dustin.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Vennessa. I'm excited about being here.
Good. So let's start from the very beginning. Like what, you in your intro, it talks about, it's always interesting listening to your own intro, isn't it? But you talk about having some early health struggles and challenges. Why don't we start with those so people can understand where you're coming from?
Yeah, you bet. It definitely started young. There's no doubt about it. I mean, pretty much, I would say right out of the gate, being born C-section is one of those things where, an individual doesn't get the microbiome that they should have from, the normal birthing process. And so anyhow, I think that already set my microbiome up, potentially my mucosal barrier for not the best of health. And so what happened is thank God that my mom, breastfed me for 2 years. So that's excellent, right? That helped a lot. But, right after that, being fed dairy milk was not a good thing. And a doctor wouldn't allow her to take me off of it, even though she knew it made me sick. Basically, like I wouldn't develop kind of thing. And, that led to, ear infections after ear infection and tonsillitis and adenoid issues and surgery and removal of all that. And eventually, right, a lot of antibiotics, throughout the whole scenario. So you already had a microbiome that was kind of already prone to not optimal health. And then you bring in, antibiotics, and it's definitely a problem. And so what happened is that I basically had every kind of doctor test, they could pretty much do on my gastrointestinal tract and stomach pain and problems. And it never really seemed to make any difference. I just got the standard, irritable bowel syndrome, deal with it for the rest of your life. And I ended up, basically like through my own study of health, I ended up basically looking into like, well, we're the only species that drinks another species' milk after we're weaned. So let me try just, going off of this or whatever. Well, I actually did really well. I was feeling so much better. this is when like nutrition even got more exciting to me, because it was like, if I can remove one food in my world and it makes that much difference, what could I do if I added or subtracted other stuff? And so it just perpetuated, this desire of being healthy. And I was into bodybuilding. And so I wanted to, be healthy and grow muscle and all that anyways. And so anyhow, but here's where the problem was, Vennessa, is that I switched over from like, regular cheese to almond cheese and soy cheese, and didn't realize that they still made it with casein protein, which is the milk protein that was all along making me sick. So I never did get totally well until I realized, that component of it. And I started, getting dairy completely out and so forth. But anyhow, that was probably the biggest aspect of it. Certainly, over my life, I've had, challenges where I've, over oxalate myself. I've, over histamine, there's all these different like little challenges, but the long and the short is that, I've been able to get my health back and have all the energy and vitality and that I want by, studying nutrition and, applying that to my life.
Isn't that crazy? Just one food, right? One part of a food, right, can totally change things. Right, nowadays we have all these different options of milks and coconut milk and cashew milk and all the nut milks and whatnots. And, like you said too, like when you're in bodybuilding, what do they focus on? It's the whey and the casein and things like that. And that whole realm, and people are like, oh yeah, you look fit, but on the inside, how many of your clients were just sick from all of that too? Not even just yourself, like how many of your own, personal training clients were sick?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That is the big focus for sure. I mean, you wanted this supposedly, right, as a bodybuilder, you wanted this casein protein to carry you through the night, because it's a really sticky, hard, slow digesting, basically protein. And so you would actually take it in powdered form and lots of it, and then, throughout the day, you'd then be drinking a bunch of whey protein. So you just really hit the dairy pretty hard.
Shake after shake after shake after shake. I mean, I was there too years ago, and my sister was in fitness competitions. I was like, yeah, just here, have another shake. Here, have another shake. Here, have another shake. And you're like, okay, they're whole food. Yeah, easy on the go, but it destroys your system and whatnot. And I love that you brought up too. And it's hard because some moms out there, they can't breastfeed or they have to have the C-sections and things like that. Talk to me just a little bit about, and our audience here, a little bit about when that happens, how you work with those moms through that and work through the clients who have been through that and help them be like, hey, you know what? It's okay. It's okay to have gone through that. We can fix it, and not help them feel like the shame and the guilt and that type of stuff.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a super good topic, Vennessa. Not everybody has their choice. Right. So like in my situation, that was not my mom's intention. She was in labor for so many hours, and, finally my heart stopped beating. She couldn't get me out. They couldn't, so anyhow, it was like emergency C-section, it was just the way it had to be. But anyhow, what I really, don't like, right, to hear is when, maybe a woman doesn't at least try or at least know ahead of time, right, and they just do it for convenience or whatever. Because if people really understood what like I went through, or what, and I basically gave you the short story, but what people go through without that optimal microbiome, it would never be like an option of like, I'm just scheduling it for my convenience, around my work or whatever, this is another person's lives. However, like you had said, right, it does sometimes have to happen, and there shouldn't be that shame and there shouldn't be that guilt, because there are a lot of things we can do now. And one of the things I would recommend is all women probably work with like a midwife or a doula, where, those type of things are taken into consideration. And one of the things, we know that is so beneficial is all they have to really do, if they know the C-section is the only option, right, is to pack the vaginal canal with gauze and things to get that microbiome, and then put it all over the baby when they finally do surgically remove it, right? that's certainly one of those things. But what you were talking about as far as working with clients and that afterwards is that, we have such a way of, supporting the microbiome now, as far as prebiotics and probiotics and, understanding now what feeds those bacteria and how to, make the mucosal barrier healthy and thrive, that, we can do it. There's a little bit more steps, right? It's a little bit more challenging, but we can certainly help people with their mucosal barrier, their microbiome, by giving those, particular, diets and supplementations and lifestyle strategies.
Well, yes. And you and I both know that the antibiotics, oh my goodness, they give you an antibiotic and they're life-saving, right? For those very critical situations. So we're very grateful for them. But when you're getting antibiotics for, I remember even my littlest one, they said at urgent care, because it's like, my ear's hurting, and goes in there like, he might have an ear infection. Here's some antibiotics. And I'm like, no, thank you. Right? They give it for anything. And it ended up just being like, we legit just went to the chiropractor. And after like 3 adjustments, the kid hasn't had an ear infection in over a year. It's those very simple things that people aren't thinking about. And it's just like antibiotic. And talk to us a little bit about how, because many of us have had antibiotics, we want the kids to stop crying. We want them to get out of pain, especially when they're younger and they can't talk and tell us exactly what's going on. But what are some other options for people when they're dealing with, even my husband had like throat issues about 1.5 years ago, and they're like, here's antibiotics. And I'm like, stay away. And he's like, no, but it hurts so much. And then, I'm dealing with this and whatnot. Like, what are some other options for people when they're dealing with those type of situations instead of the antibiotics?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Certainly they have to decide, right? They have to decide, what is, like, I guess, what I would just don't want to do, right? I wouldn't want to step in the way of saying like, hey, instead of going and getting an antibiotic, or instead of, doing, what you need to do to save your life or whatever, do X, Y, and Z, that's certainly not the goal. However, what we need to do, I think initially, Vennessa, is to have like and I'll go into some of this too, but to have kind of a medicine cabinet per se of remedies that are a little bit more natural and that you at least go to at the first sign of not feeling well. But I think the bigger step too, prior to that, is just building that immune system. So often, right, you and I've had conversations around how important vitamin D is, and people are avoiding the sun. And I can't imagine anything else out there being more effective than preformed vitamin D from the sun, right? The most active form is already sulfated, it's ready to go, and so that would be like, the biggest step, right? Is let's do some proactive, stuff rather than reactive. But when there is that time, of reactiveness where, you can get by with doing something naturally, I think that you probably do want to have a medicine cabinet full of some good things. And, one of the things I really like, and I think it works really well, is colloidal silver. I think that's an excellent one for topical applications. It's great for oral applications. And, centuries that it's been used, everything from way back when they just dropped a silver coin into their water, right? To keep that water purified and not let it get bacteria. So that's always a nice remedy, to have. There's excellent herbs out there that are, super immune boosting. There's things like astragalus that is fantastic. Another one that hits a little bit faster and harder is andrographics. So that's an excellent one. There's echinacea root, certainly is fantastic. Oftentimes what we also feel the pain with is a lot of times the inflammatory aspect of, what's going on in the body. And so anyhow, it's having things like turmeric and ginger around, to knock back inflammation, frankincense and boswellia, which are basically the same thing. So anyhow, I think that if we have things to deal with the inflammation, we have things to deal with pain. There's excellent herbs like white willow bark. There's excellent herbs like corydalis. CBD, right? These things can be there for you for pain and inflammation. You can have things like the herbs and the colloidal silver I talked about for bacteria killing. So anyhow, I mean, I think there's definitely a good toolbox to have naturally out there that you can at least give that a shot first, so you can try to see if, hey, I'm dealing better, I'm feeling better, and I don't necessarily have to go to the doctor at this point. But I definitely wouldn't want to discourage anybody from not saving their lives just to try something or whatever. But I think we so often, like you said, it's like the ear infection. I read a book years ago that basically talked about how the vast majority of ear infections don't even get supported by antibiotics. Like it doesn't even help. It's so anyhow, we do want to try these more natural remedies, and I can't imagine anyone else or anything being so important as just simply garlic. Right. I mean, man, let's have some. They make such great garlic extracts now. With you can get it in liquid or capsule.
Come on, just get the whole roasted one. That's what we would do. Like growing up, I remember just putting cloves of it in the oven and just roasting it and just spooning it out and eat. If you can handle that, it's a little rough, but
yeah. Vennessa, here's one of them that I do in typically July, which you and I are just about there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or all of us are just about there.
Right.
Normally, that's when the garlic harvest is a lot of times happening. Even myself, I've got some planted this year. But you basically peel those cloves, peel the skin off of them, and then just stuff them in a jar of honey. And then, basically I just have like a rotating, and every year I've got a whole new batch, basically, that if it sits in the honey, it ferments. And fermented garlic and honey is like one of your best immune boosters. And it's not very challenging to actually take. It seems like the honey breaks down, the garlic overwhelm, the burn, it doesn't seem to give you near the dragon breath, all of that, but it's super immune boosting. And there's stories, I don't know how legitimate it is, but basically that they had found fermented garlic in honey in like tombs from thousands of years ago that was still edible, still just fine.
I don't know. Would you want to try that from all those years ago?
I don't think so at all. I know. Yeah. So that's another great, like backup plan, right? Is just to have this jar of honey, and people can, certainly find out about, how to do it online. It's super simple. But this jar of honey with garlic cloves in it, and as soon as you start to feel the least bit of anything, you just start eating those cloves, a few a day. And it's amazing. My family and myself just notice a huge difference and feel really well afterwards.
Well, that's a great tip for sure. I mean, and garlic is easy enough to grow. Honey, you can get anywhere. I always recommend local honey if you can find it, and pay a little bit more for it and whatnot. But that's a great tip. That really is. Now, talk to us about, how did you find out that you were so sensitive to the whey and the casein? Like, what did you just read it somewhere? Did someone tell you? Tell me about that.
No, it actually came from, just like you and I, Vennessa, do, food sensitivity tests. I had done that, years ago through another practitioner that I was working with. And it actually sub-identified in that particular test. It sub-identified casein and whey. And I don't know if I was as sensitive to the whey. I can't remember as much, but casein was definitely red hot for me. But it also did like things like the egg yolks, right? The egg whites. So you were able to really identify what was going on. And so that's what was finally like, I actually knew of like what to look for. So that's how I knew about the cheeses, because now it was like looking at every ingredient. And then it was like, oh, I've been eating this, rice cheese or whatever, almond cheese, soy cheese. And, nowadays there's tons of like more of what they consider vegan options, right? That wouldn't have even the animal protein in there of casein. But at the time, the alternative was the rice and the soy and all that. And what's interesting to me is like knowing what I know now about casein. What was almost the point of that? Like that doesn't seem to be even worthwhile.
It's not in breast milk.
Right. But I don't understand why people would make an alternative to milk cheese with milk protein like that. that doesn't make sense to me, but maybe they were just trying to avoid the lactose, I guess, even though, lactose isn't typically in cheese or other fermented as much into other fermented dairy foods, because the bacteria consume it so quickly when they ferment, right? So anyhow, it's weird to me. I don't quite understand it, but anyhow, that's how I knew it was from the running a food sensitivity test, which I think you and I know clear as day. It's such a huge game changer. So I think everyone should probably look into their food sensitivities. It would be great, if we lived back in the day where we didn't have all the antibiotics that had basically, destroyed our guts. And we didn't live in the day where we have like the nastiest chemical on earth, which is glyphosate, right? Just permeating our water and our air and our rain, right? It would be wonderful, but we do. That's just the facts. So the facts are that we're probably going to leak food and probably the stuff we eat the most of, like I did when I was bodybuilding, right? These protein into our gut, and into our bloodstream, out of our gut, right? The leaky hyperpermeable gut that we talk about. So, highly encourage those type of screenings, for individuals.
Yeah, and talk to us a little bit about the leaky gut too, and how our microbiome is affected by leaky guts. I mean, some people, like for me, I can't do avocado. God, I miss guacamole, but like I can't do avocado because it permeates my gut. And, until I start building up even more and more and more strong gut, then I can't have it. I watch everyone else and I cringe, and then other people can eat it like crazy or whatever the food may be. But like, talk to us about leaky gut and how it just really affects our whole body.
Yeah, I think that's a great topic. The thing about the gut, right, is it actually ends up starting with a microbiome. So if you have a really solid microbiome, the microbiome produce what's called short chain fatty acids. One of those is butyric acid, which is absolutely critical for healing the cells and helping we have these little cells, right, that line our intestinal tract that are super vulnerable. They're one cell wall thick. They're called enterocytes. They make up our intestinal epithelium. And if we are not having the right amount of microbiome, which means that we're going to have the right amount of butyric acid or butyrate, we're not going to be able to heal and seal those cells. So things are going to now, the cells themselves are going to now possibly be permeable. And we end up basically having what we call a transcellular penetration of food and bacterial antigens that go right into the bloodstream. Well, like we talked about earlier, when we have this chemicals of glyphosate, or we've got this, dysbiosis in the gut because of maybe a round of antibiotics or whatever, bad diet and so forth, we have what we call paracellular penetration. So we've got two different types of penetration happening that can basically lead to leaky gut. But the thing we have to recognize is that most of the time it comes from a microbiome that is very insufficient, right? And it's not producing the right butyrate. Also, one thing, Vennessa, you and I look into, right, is how well people digest protein. And another one of those fuels to the cells is glutamine, right? So that's an important amino acid. It's another one of those things. So we need a short chain fatty acid, butyric acid. We need a amino acid, which is glutamine. And both of those are going to be critical for healing the cells. Well, people aren't digesting their protein. They don't have the right microbiome. So now their guts, right, going to be that much more or that much less likely to heal and seal, right? So anyhow, now we end up getting this permeability of the gut. And how you were talking about how it affects the whole body is it does. Like we have autoimmunity running rampant in our country, right? Because our gut is so permeable. And most, I would say, experts have now recognized that, that's a lot to do with our constant exposure to, the food and bacterial antigens, our immune system's like overwhelmed, right? So it just starts to attack things that aren't really necessary and overact. And then, look at this, we end up with autoimmune, which affects the entire body. But I mean, it's so wide ranging. It's everything from, thyroid issues to, fatigue to, headaches to, joint problems. I mean, you name it. I mean, not just digestion, right? It's not just isolated to like a little bit of bloating. Like this is actually full on whole body, and the skin gets highly affected. The skin is typically, one of your first signs that your gut is pretty permeable the minute you start to, develop some form of skin issue.
Yeah, and that's really interesting too, because a lot of people are like, oh, I'll use my husband, for example, because he's not here. But he would get acne really bad. And he used, what was the old Accutane? I mean, just like crazy. And it's like, we all see something on the surface and we want to fix the surface, rosacea, right? Acne, those type of things. I used to get like flushing of my face and things like that. And you're like, oh, okay, it's just maybe for a woman, it's that time of month or whatever it is. And it's really not. It's deeper than that. It's so much deeper. I don't know about you, but I have clients who come to me like, oh my gosh, I'm just so fatigued. And I know it's X condition. And I'm like, well, I mean, fatigue, it could be how many different conditions, we'll call them, pill for every ill type thing. Like, there's so many different conditions, right? So let's stop putting a name to the conditions and whatnot, because they all intertwine so much. And we're not looking at, right? Everyone, you hear it out this past couple of years, like your gut health is the biggest thing. Yeah, it relates to everything from brain conditions, thyroid conditions, right? We all know this, yet how hard is it for us actually to do the work, right? Of figuring out our gut issues. I've had clients and I tell them, you know what? You could just keep dealing with the fatigue. You don't want to solve the real problem. You just want to have a cup of coffee. You just want a pill. You just want whatever. You want to go get some tests quickly run by your doctor, who's going to sit down with you for average of 8 minutes and talk to you about what? Right? They're going to give you another pill. They're going to tell you it's on your head. You're going to tell you get more rest, eat healthier. That's my favorite, eat healthier type thing. And it's like, no, right? You got to solve the root cause. And you and I are both, right, root cause detectives. It's ironic. I studied engineering and root cause analysis stuff way back in, engineering school and whatnot. And here it is in health, right? It's everywhere. So, you and I both talk about with clients, we've got to dive in deep. And deep,
right?
I know from therapy, anyone who's been through therapy, that's hard stuff, right? It's hard to work through. It's not a quick fix. Your gut didn't get to where it was at in a year, even, right? I mean, you talk about from birth, right? How many different things pass across, right? The sac, right? How many different things pass when the kid passes through the vaginal canal, right? How many different things? I mean, it's so crazy how much the gut is affected in our everyday lives, the foods that we eat, the environments, the Canada fires right now, everyone, right? Breathing the stuff in, that stuff goes in there too. It's not just in your lungs. Everything is affected. So when you're starting with a client, what do you tend to do in terms of help them with their gut? Everyone, right? You said butyrate and you said, glutamine and stuff like that. Butyrate, where does that come from? Is that a supplement we all can take?
Right. Yeah. Super good question.
I giggle at that being sarcastic, right?
Yep, absolutely. I would say real quick to Vennessa, before I jump on to, maybe the leaky gut, you were talking about the root cause. It reminded me of a conversation that I had with my dad, and it wasn't even all that long ago. He was sitting there at the kitchen table and he said, so what exactly do you do again? And so anyhow, I said, well, let's just look out the window. Do you see that tree right there? And he's like, yeah. And I said, well, if that tree was turning yellow, like all the branches and all the leaves are turning yellow, and it's not fall, right? Because we happen to be looking at like a pine tree or a cedar tree, right? So it's not just a regular tree that turns yellow. But if all that turned yellow and it's starting to die, right, and not looks like it's supposed to and healthy, the conventional model would come out and go, wow, looking at this, and the symptoms of this yellow tree, I'm going to go ahead and give it a name, and I'm going to give it yellow branch syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so anyhow, but I have a solution for yellow branch syndrome. And that is that I've got a can of green spray paint in my car, right? So they come over and they spray paint the tree and it's all green again, right? and we've covered up the symptom, right? We've covered up the symptom of that yellow branch. Whereas what I would do, Dad, is I would just start digging at the roots. And I would start looking into the roots, and I would be like, what is going on with this root system? You know, I mean, is the bugs getting to it? Does it not have enough moisture? What is going on, right? And so that's kind of what you and I are doing, right? Is that we're really digging at the roots. You know, we want to figure out what's going on underneath. And the gut would be that scenario, right? Is that gut is part of that root of really, you know, keeping us healthy. You know, we talk about when we educate our clients about the microbiome and the mucosal barrier of how, like, if you spread just your small intestine out surface area wise, you could potentially cover a couple tennis ball courts worth of surface, right? Well, why is that? It's because we need all of that surface area to absorb the massive amount of nutrients that we ultimately need, right? Well, when we're talking about that surface area, we're talking about those cells that we talked about earlier that we really want to make sure have their optimal fuel. And that's that butyric acid that you just had mentioned. And yes, it will come in a supplement, right? You can buy butyrate or butyric acid in a supplement, no problem. However, it does become a little bit difficult to absorb. So you have to use companies that do a good job of making sure that absorption is a little bit more better, right? And so what we really want to do is we want to try to spin it up or gain more of it with bacteria. That's really where it comes from, right? So we want to do things that feed our microbiome instead of, basically just going out and getting a supplement. But so, Vennessa, the original word butyrate came from the word butter. So where people traditionally get it and can heal their gut from is using butter. But if they have dairy sensitivities, then the next step would be go with ghee. So ghee is going to be, a clarified butter where the solids, the casein and the lactose have been removed. So that's a good thing for people to utilize. But how would we spin up bacteria so we could actually make more butyrate? Well, we really do want to use those foods that are, prebiotic rich. And one of those foods that people don't necessarily know about that is super healthy and super great for you. And if you ever do plant it, it'll spread like wildfire and you'll have more of it than you ever need. But it's called sunchoke, or also known as Jerusalem artichoke. And it's just this basically like tuber that grows under the ground, and it's got a little bit of a sweet taste to it, and it's not super starchy like potatoes. And so it's a really amazing food. But because it feeds your bacteria so well, it basically has a nickname as a fartichoke rather than, basically sunchoke.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So anyhow, but you can always get away from that by, just like anything that has a lot of inulin or prebiotic fiber, you can get away from that by just incorporating small amounts and slowly get your microbiome used to it. So that's excellent way. But we have things like asparagus. We have things like garlic we talked about earlier, onions, leeks. I mean, these things are high in inulin. But if somebody really wants a supplement, okay, Vennessa, that will just be a game changer, is how you and I basically grew a lot of our microbiome from the get-go was in our mother's breast milk. There's what's called human milk oligosaccharides. And so you can purchase HMO prebiotics out there on the market, and you can actually really upregulate your microbiome by, feeding your body these HMOs. And they're not from human milk. They don't derive them from that, but instead they use fermentation processes to make these HMOs. And what's great is now we have access to them. Before it was like, if you wanted that, you'd have to go buy some baby food. And that'd be about the only way you could, find it, is some baby food manufacturers would throw it in there, but that's a great way to do it. Another good strategy is that most bacteria love polyphenols. So when you've heard those old analogy of eat the rainbow, that's another basically reason why. Not that it won't affect your skin and your eyes and all the things that you need carotenoids packed into every day to avoid the UV light. But we ultimately need, the polyphenols to feed our microbiome. And you can get those also in a supplement. I mean, there's lots of companies that do, polyphenols of all different colors, or just reds, or just purple, or whatever. But you can definitely grow your microbiome pretty solid with that.
Oh yeah. And it's great. Everyone wants a quick fix of a supplement. Sometimes that's what we have. That's all we have available. But I mean, you and I both know if you can go I always challenge my boys, we'll go to whether it's, we have Woodman's out here in the Chicagoland area or Sprouts. And we sit there and we say, okay, what new fruit or vegetable are we going to try? And we just start grabbing the different ones. If it's something that, we can obviously eat too, but it starts building even them up. I mean, sometimes there's some days, and this is with kids and adults, y'all. Okay. They'll be like, I hate asparagus. I hate asparagus. Then they're like, I like the tops. Then I like the bottoms. Then I love asparagus, right? Absolutely love it. But, and then if you can grow it, let's get back to the basics, y'all. I mean, it's not difficult to grow most fruits and vegetables. I laughed when you were talking about the Jerusalem artichoke because we have, when we moved into this new place that we're at, we're like, what is that spreading? I mean, it kind of smells like mint or spearmint, but like it looks like a weed, but I'm not sure, whatever. And it was just confirmed actually yesterday that we've mint. And that stuff we've had people come out and dig it and like everything. And the previous owners did too, tried to eradicate it, whatever. I mean, the stuff is still there. So I was like, when I thought you were going to say mint, and I'm like, that doesn't have, but okay. Yeah, it was Jerusalem artichoke, but it's spread. But things are so easy to do. I mean, we've got even potato bags that we're growing lettuces and stuff in. So you could do it inside, you could do it outside, you could do all those things, but those things are going to help with your microbiome and eliminate the pesticides and all those different things that are out there. And then it's back to you controlling your own health versus someone else, right? We leave it all up to someone else most of the time. Our doctor tells us what to do. The grocery stores tell us what to do. Diets tell us what to do, right? All the different ones. And why not start owning more of that ourselves by saying, hey, I'm allowed to have leeks. These are really great ones for me to have. It's got all the things that I need in it. Let me grow them. Onion bulbs are pretty easy to grow, right? Very easy to grow, quick. They're fun if you have kids, teaching them. I had wildflowers out front. You know how long those took actually this year to grow? And they're like, well, they're not growing. They look like weeds, Mommy. Let me pull them. I'm like, no, just wait. And then one day we woke up and there was just a ton that went into bloom. And so it's really an experience for everyone too, in patience, right? Because again, like we talked about earlier, this stuff doesn't happen to our systems overnight, right? Just like a flower or plant, anything doesn't happen overnight. And it's also going to, as I'm sure you deal with your clients too, reversing it, getting a better microbiome doesn't happen overnight too. I don't know about you, we've got a few more minutes here, but like with me too, like explain to people like how easy or not easy it was for you starting out to rebuild that microbiome, knowing what you knew. And you're like, well, the whey and the casein, I was bodybuilding for all these years. I had these, this in my head and whatnot. How easy it was to get a better microbiome, that whole process.
Yeah, it's not easy, Vennessa. That's a real problem, is that, like you had said, everything takes time. There's just, unfortunately, nature is that way. And I think it would be, even great to have a little bit of analogy of like, if you and I talked about that pine tree kind of thing or cedar tree earlier, right? It's like, that took forever to grow, right? It's not like it just happened, overnight or whatever. And so it does naturally, doing things does take a while. It's not that it can't be done. So we certainly want to get started, as soon as we can. But it does basically take a multifaceted approach is the way I basically like to describe it, where you do bring in, the probiotics from supplements, go ahead and use those to our benefit. And there's many of them out there, but also use those probiotic foods and get yourself into, learning more about, not only the gardening, but the fermentation of actual foods. And speaking of gardening, the other thing is that you can gain a lot of that from your soil, right? So if your hands are always in the dirt, you're always basically breathing the dirt, you're in that more natural environment, the microbiome is pretty lot more solid, right? So we want to use prebiotics, we want to use probiotics, we want to be in nature, in dirt, right? Getting that. But we also want to make sure that we avoid those things that are devastating our gut. right? That we don't end up bringing in large amounts of sugar that'll feed the bad bacteria, right? That we don't end up bringing a large amounts of simple carbohydrates and breads and things that are going to just.
But they taste so good, Dustin. I mean, right? Yeah. They taste you, but like I used to eat. I don't think I've touched a long time.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key, right? Is this, you don't want to be touching ideally the bread and the sugar, too much. And certainly, if you get a natural source like we talked about earlier with the honey, that would kind of be a better route by far. But yeah, it does take a while, Vennessa, but I encourage everybody to do their very best. And you can research all kinds of different ways of, making your own yogurts or whatever that are a whole lot more robust than what you would buy at the store. And you don't necessarily have to use dairy as your, main constituent, right? You could use, the coconut milk or whatever. But yeah, fermented foods are great. Lots of prebiotic fibers, lots of colors, with those polyphenols, and you'll do good. We were just talking about garlic, and one of the another fermented garlic thing is that they make actual garlic fermenters, and you can buy, and you just take a little bit of moisture and put your entire bulb of garlic, and many of them in this little thing. It looks like a little bit of a rice cooker. And make sure you do it outside because you're going to have this garlic right smell.
That's like the fish that we were talking about earlier too.
Yeah. But anyhow, you just plug this thing in outside, let it sit for 40 days. So it's got this warm, moist environment. And when it comes out, you basically have almost like these little black jelly beans, and they're garlic. It's fermented, it's black garlic is what it is. And you can buy it in supplements, but it increases. So garlic's already a pretty sweet antioxidant, but it increases the antioxidants. I believe I'd read somewhere around like 20 times more antioxidants just in black garlic. And again, because it's fermented, you're certainly going to either give your body more bacteria, or you're going to give your body more of the bacterial breakdown products that fermented foods do to feed your current microbiome in the gut.
Look at y'all. We have our garlic expert here. Who would have known? I mean, I've known y'all this time, and garlic, my goodness.
Yeah.
Some garlic, head over to Dustin's house in Colorado there.
Yeah, my friends got me into Vennessa growing. He grows 16 different varieties of gourmet garlic. And so anyhow, he's got me into doing that. A lot of the stiff neck garlic is the gourmet, and it goes for a good amount per pound. And so it's best if you grow it because it's a whole lot less expensive, right? But there's ones that are called like Spanish Rojo, ones that's called Bocatar, another one called Music. So I mean, some good garlic varieties that are super, and they all have their own unique variety of flavor and taste, and it's pretty awesome. I love it.
Jeez, well, you know what? I will come right over because I make the sourdough bread from scratch here at home, and so I do that fermenting process, and we'll just, get some fresh olive oil and some garlic and just have it, and herbs. Wait, I got some basil over here too. I'll grab that.
Nice.
We have ourselves a feast, right?
Yeah.
So if you could tell Dustin, as we're ending up here, like, you could leave like one nugget, because we had so many amazing nuggets of just health and wellness here that you shared with us from personal life and what you've learned and clients. If you could share one thing that you want to leave people with today to remember you by, other than garlic, of what they can do to better their health or whatnot, what would that be?
Wow, there is so many, right? It's so common for us to, biohack our way all the way to Friday, but anyhow, Vennessa, I'd say, top of mind, and I do encourage this to everyone, and I know it's not comfortable, but you won't believe the health benefits that you will gain from cold water exposure. I mean, it is just a game changer. I mean, the mental clarity, and this is something cool because you and I just talked about leaky gut, but oftentimes when the gut is leaky, okay, so is the brain. So we have this brain-blood barrier, right? And that becomes leaky because the gut's leaky. And so anyhow, one of the ways of strategizing.
Brain fog for y'all not, understanding that connection, brain fog.
No doubt. Well, and so when we talk about that leaky gut, one of the things that helped me so much in my life because of the amount of leaky gut from the microbiome decimation, right, was about cold water exposure, basically finally, sealing up my brain, because I ran into so many issues of not being able to take those certain supplements or those things that I wanted to do with myself, because it just lit my brain up because I had such a leaky brain. So anyhow, cold water exposure, it can be as easy, right, as just, a few minutes, a few seconds after your warm shower, you make it cold, eventually building into a few minutes, getting into, all of the, certainly cold creeks eventually, or the cold, lakes, or, even building yourself a cold plunge.
I just spray my boys down with cold water from the hose. It works well.
Perfect. That's awesome. Yeah, love that.
Thank you so much, Dustin, for sharing all of that stuff. Where can everyone find you, so that if they resonate with what you've talked about or want to learn more, how they can connect with you? We'll obviously share the notes as well.
Sure, you bet. So, I don't do a lot of social media. I feel like it definitely takes a lot of time, sucks a lot of time out, and I don't have enough of that with helping as many people as I possibly can. But I do have a website that is seriousaboutwellness.com. And if you can't remember that and you just want to remember my name of dustinmcfarland.com, it'll direct you right back to that same website. But yeah, reach out there. I've got a contact page, and I'll be happy to, get back with you and help you navigate this health journey, because it's not oftentimes an easy, quick process, right? We oftentimes have to adjust our way throughout the way, but we can figure it out.
Yes, we can. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us, and everyone out there, go ahead and take a look at the show notes, check him out. He has a wealth of information, and can definitely help you if it's someone that you resonate with. And as always, keep on designing the best you.
Oh my goodness, what another amazing episode. Well, thank you so much for joining us this week on Designing the Best You. Make sure to visit our websites listed in the show notes, where you can subscribe in iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, any other feed, so you'll never miss a show. And hey, while you're at it, if you found value in the show, we would appreciate a rating on iTunes. Go ahead, screenshot this episode, tag us, and share on your favorite social media platform so others can find us too and get the help that they need. If you want to learn more, make sure you check out the show notes, where you can find links to our pages, as well as the opportunity to sign up for a free call with Vennessa. We cannot wait to see you on the inside. And remember, keep on designing the best you from the inside out.